2023, I stood on this legend stage for the very first time and told my story publicly about my disability and my life-saving surgery. Since that time, I have spoke at many events, I've done keynotes, I've done podcasts, I've traveled all around sharing my story. I know the story very well and it's easy to tell, but tonight I'm going to tell a story that I've never shared publicly before. So in 2014, I'm going to try to do it without crying. In 2014, my life changed forever. I remember the day so vividly. My wife, Roxanne, came to me and she said she needed to talk to me. She had something she needed to tell me. I remember we were in our bedroom at the house, and we sat down on the bed. And I remember she told me that my son had shared something with her that he needed to tell me, but he couldn't. I remember her telling me, you have two choices. You're going to either accept your son for who he is, or you're going to lose him forever. I remember sitting there on the bed with her. I didn't know what he had to tell me or what he was going to say. We went downstairs. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my son, Grant, who was 15 years old at the time. And I remember looking at him, and I remember his voice cracking as he tried to tell me what it was that he had to say. I remember my wife, Roxanne, looking at me, and I remember her just waiting for those words to come out of his mouth, and she could see the look on my face. I remember my heart beating out of my chest. I remember it was pounding. What was he going to tell me? What was he going to say? And then Grant said it. He said, "Dad, I'm gay." And I remember after he said it, I was shocked. I didn't know that was what he was going to say. And I looked at him and I said, "Grant, are you also a Democrat?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "I don't think I can handle both." I said, "You're going to have to pick one. Which is it going to be?" And I remember he looked at me and he said, "Dad, I'll be gay." I said, "Okay." I was devastated. And to this day, I'll tell you, politics is something that we bond over. It's our special thing. Grant and I talk about politics all of the time. We do not agree. We have very different beliefs. But we always respect each other. And we always come to a common agreement. And that's been our special thing that we have between the two of us. I remember Grant's friends in school. They were a very diverse group of kids. They were from all different nationalities and all different backgrounds. They didn't look anything like me. They were different. And I remember they nicknamed themselves the United Nations. That's what the kids all called themselves. So whenever we go anywhere, we do anything, everything was always the kids from the United Nations. And I remember one of the boys in the group. I remember that his parents were really strict and that they only cared about his academics. They never attended anything at the school. They never came. They were never there for him, ever. We never saw them at anything. And I remember going to the band meets. We were cheering for him. And I remember one day he yells from the stand, from the grass to the stand. He says, "Hi, Mom and Dad." He saw us as his parents. I remember there was another friend of Grant's, a girl. And she was in a very dysfunctional household. She struggled. I remember she would escape her home to come to ours. It was the only time she could get away and have peace. I remember she would spend time at our house. And I remember my wife and I always referring to her as our daughter. And I remember her calling us Mom and Dad. And then I remember we actually adopted her into our family and made her our daughter. She looked different than us, than me, but she was part of our family. Now I got to get to my notes, sorry. I recently wrote a book. It's called What's Your Mindset? It's sitting up here with my Bible. It's only been out a month. And in this book, I share about Grant and about how my mind shift change had a lot to do when Grant came into my life. I always thought everything was black and white and that things had to be a certain way. And after Grant opened my mind up to new things and diversity and people that looked different than me and that were different than me, I made a mind shift change. I want to share with you what that is. There are the 3 steps to a mind shift change. I believe you don't ask why me, you ask, what can this teach me? I believe you have to shift your energy away from what you don't understand and towards what you can change. And number 3, you have to accept new teachings to renew your mind. Since I was born Christian and I didn't believe that you could be born gay, it was really difficult for me to have to choose between my faith or my son. Now I realize that I don't have to do that I can have both. I can have my faith and my son. Grant's diversity and his values that he has are the values that I share today. And I wouldn't be who I am without Grant in my life. Grant, who's sitting here in the front row, just makes it even harder. Thank you for being you. Thank you for never changing for anyone. Thank you for making me who I am today. Your mindset is everything. I want you to remember that you can change your mind. I know we were all born equal and we're created equal, but we're not all treated equal. I want to share with you my favorite Bible verse. It's Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Thank you. Can you come up on stage? Thank you.
So
Grant. Thank you.